10 Chinese luxury SUVs. One country that just opened its border to them, and most Canadians have no idea any of this is happening right now. In late 2026, the first BYD dealership opens its doors in Toronto. Not a rumor, not a concept, an actual confirmed date. By the time this video ends, you're going to understand exactly which Chinese SUVs are landing in Canada, which ones are still stuck in customs paperwork, and which one already beat every single German luxury brand to Canadian soil months ago. If you're into videos that break down what's actually changing in the car world, hit like, because these take real time to put together, and subscribe so you catch the next one. Let's start with the one nobody's talking about, because it already happened. The SUV that snuck in first. Here's a fact that will genuinely surprise most car shoppers in Canada right now. A Chinese-built luxury SUV is already sitting in Canadian showrooms today. Not launching soon, not coming this year. Available right now. It's called the Lotus Electre, and it was the first Chinese-built EV to arrive in Canada under the new tariff structure. Lotus is owned by Geely, the same Chinese conglomerate that owns Volvo and Polestar, which means the brand recognition problem that usually slows Chinese automakers down simply doesn't apply here. People already trust the Lotus badge, they just don't realize the car underneath it rolled off a production line in China. The Electre is a full-size luxury SUV, built to go toe-to-toe with a Porsche Cayenne or a BMW iX, and it's proof of something bigger than one car. It proves a Chinese-built premium SUV can sit in a Canadian showroom, wear a trusted badge, and nobody blinks. That's the blueprint every other Chinese brand on this list is now trying to copy. The brand about to flood the market. Now let's talk about the company that's going to change this conversation more than any other single automaker, BYD. If you don't know the name yet, you will very soon. 8 Chinese manufacturers have confirmed or signaled Canadian market entry, and BYD alone is planning 10 models across 20 dealerships, opening first in Toronto before expanding to Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary. This isn't a toe in the water. This is a company building out a full national dealer network before a single retail customer has bought a car. Number 10 on our list is the BYD Atto 3, a compact luxury crossover expected to land somewhere around 42,000 Canadian dollars. It won't be the flagship, but it's the car that establishes trust, the one regular families will actually cross-shop against a Toyota RAV4 or a Honda CR-V. And here's the detail that should genuinely worry every established compact SUV maker in Canada right now. Chinese EVs are consistently landing 30 to 50% below comparable North American and Korean alternatives, and the Atto 3 is expected to carry that same pricing advantage straight into Canadian lots. Number 9 takes us up the BYD lineup to something with real presence, the Ceylon 07 or Song L, depending on which naming convention BYD ultimately settles on for Canada. Think of this as BYD's answer to a mid-size luxury crossover, aimed directly at buyers currently cross-shopping a Lexus RX or an Audi Q5, but priced meaningfully lower while still packing BYD's signature blade battery technology, the same lithium iron phosphate cell design that passed nail penetration tests other manufacturers' batteries failed outright. The compact luxury option, nobody expected this fast. Number 8 belongs to Zeekr, Geely's premium EV brand, and specifically the Zeekr X. This is a compact luxury crossover expected to start around 45 to 50,000 Canadian dollars, positioned to compete directly with entry-level luxury crossovers from Audi and BMW. Zeekr trademarked its name in Canada back in 2025, which tells you the paperwork groundwork has already been laid, even if a firm launch date hasn't been nailed down publicly yet. When a company trademarks its name in a country years before it plans to sell a single car there, that's not speculation, that's a company quietly building infrastructure while nobody's watching. Number 7 moves up to the Zeekr 7X, a mid-size SUV built to go head-to-head with the single best-selling electric vehicle on the planet right now, the Tesla Model Y. Industry analysts expect Canadian pricing to land somewhere between $55,000 and $65,000, putting it right in the heart of the segment Tesla has dominated almost unchallenged for years. If Zeekr can undercut Tesla's pricing while matching or beating its range and charging speed, that's not a minor product launch. That's a direct shot at the single most profitable vehicle segment in the entire EV industry, the one with a genuine engineering party trick. Number 6 is where things get genuinely interesting from a pure technology standpoint. NIO's ES8, a full-size luxury SUV that NIO is currently evaluating for the Canadian market, though no confirmed launch date exists yet. Here's why it's worth knowing about regardless. NIO built its entire brand identity around a feature no other automaker on this list, or arguably any automaker in the world, has fully committed to at scale: battery swapping. Instead of plugging in and waiting, you pull into a station, and a robotic system swaps your depleted battery for a fully charged one in under 3 minutes. That's faster than filling a gas tank. If NIO does confirm Canadian entry, and it's still an if right now, it would bring a genuinely different ownership model into the Canadian market, One that sidesteps the entire cold weather charging anxiety conversation altogether, since you're never actually waiting on a charger to begin with. Number 5 belongs to Chery, specifically through its Omoda and JQ sub-brands. The Omoda E5 is a stylish compact SUV with a 61 kilowatt-hour battery and a striking dual-screen dashboard, estimated to land somewhere between 35 and 40,000 Canadian dollars. Chery isn't a household name in North America yet, but it's genuinely one of the largest automakers most Canadians have never heard of, and it's establishing a dealer network in parallel with BYD and Zeekr, rather than waiting to see how the market responds first, the one already sitting in showrooms. Which brings us back to number 4, and it's worth repeating because it's the single most important entry on this entire list. The Lotus Eletre, it's not launching, it's not expected, it's not pending approval, it is right now sitting on Canadian dealer lots, available to test drive and purchase today. A full-size luxury SUV built in China, wearing a British badge with 6 decades of motorsport heritage behind it, competing directly against the Porsche Cayenne and BMW iX on specs, while quietly proving the entire premise every other brand on this list is betting on, that Canadian buyers will choose a Chinese-built luxury SUV once the badge, the pricing, and the technology line up. Now we get into the 2 most genuinely staggering vehicles on this entire list, and neither one has a fully confirmed Canadian launch date yet. But the specs are real, verified, and worth understanding regardless of exactly when they cross the border. The full-size SUV with supercar numbers hiding inside it. Number 3 is the Zeekr 8X, and this is where the story stops being about affordability and starts being about raw engineering ambition. This is a full-size luxury SUV built on Zeekr's Sustainable Experience architecture platform, and it runs on a plug-in hybrid setup that sounds almost fictional until you see the numbers written down. The powertrain combines a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with an electric hybrid system capable of producing up to 1,381 horsepower. Read that again. 1,381 horsepower in a full-size family SUV, not a hypercar. Combined range on the WLTP testing cycle stretches up to 1,049 kilometers, with electric-only range up to 328 kilometers depending on configuration, meaning most Canadian owners could handle their entire daily commute on electric power alone, while still having a gasoline engine as backup for genuine road trips or brutal winter range anxiety. This is the exact formula that solves the single biggest objection Canadian buyers have to full EVs. What happens when it's -30 and I need to drive 4 hours to see family? The Zeekr 8X answers that question with a gas engine sitting quietly in reserve, ready the moment the battery needs backup, the one built for buyers who genuinely don't need to ask the price. Number 2 is the Zeekr 9X, the 8X's even larger sibling, built specifically to challenge the Range Rover and Mercedes GLS at the absolute top of the luxury SUV segment. This is Zeekr's flagship statement piece, reportedly running a quad-motor layout producing well over 1,300 horsepower. Paired with an active electromagnetic suspension system that reads the road surface ahead in real time and adjusts before the wheel ever hits a bump. Inside, the reported feature list reads like something out of a private jet rather than an SUV. Marshmallow foam cloud lounge seating, a privacy glass partition that turns the rear cabin into a soundproof isolation pod, and a 3,800-watt sound system with speakers built directly into the headrests. None of this is confirmed for Canadian delivery yet, and I want to be upfront about that. But if Zeekr's Canadian rollout follows the pattern BYD is currently setting, the flagship model typically arrives within 12 to 18 months of the brand's first dealership opening. The flagship that does things no SUV should physically be able to do. Which brings us to number 1, and it earns the top spot not just on price or power, but on sheer engineering audacity. BYD's ultra-luxury sub-brand, Yangwang, and specifically the U8L. This is BYD's answer to the question of what happens when you give engineers a completely unlimited budget and tell them to ignore every convention. The U8L runs on 4 completely independent electric motors, one dedicated to each wheel, which unlocks something genuinely unprecedented in a production vehicle. A full 360-degree tank turn, rotating the entire SUV in place on pavement without moving forward or backward even slightly. It also features what BYD calls emergency float mode, where the sealed cabin can actually float and drive across water at roughly 1.8 miles per hour for up to 30 minutes during flood conditions, an emergency safety feature that sounds like it belongs in a military vehicle, not a luxury family SUV. It's currently not confirmed whether Yangwang specifically will be part of BYD's initial Canadian rollout, since the first wave of BYD models announced for Canada leans toward more mainstream, accessible pricing. But if BYD follows the same expansion pattern it's used in markets like Europe and Southeast Asia, the ultra-luxury Yangwang sub-brand typically arrives a full product cycle after the mainstream lineup establishes itself. Here's the honest limit in all of this, and it's worth being straight about before wrapping up. Right now, in 2026, only one SUV on this entire list, the Lotus Eletre, is something you can actually walk into a Canadian dealership and drive home today. Everything else ranges from confirmed but not yet launched, like BYD's core lineup opening in Toronto later this year, to genuinely uncertain, like NIO and Yangwang, where the companies themselves haven't locked in Canadian timelines, and there's a real regulatory wrinkle worth knowing about too. Canada's federal EVAP incentive program requires vehicles to be manufactured in Canada or a free trade partner country, which excludes Chinese-built EVs regardless of price. Provincial rebates like Quebec's Roulet Vert program and Prince Edward Island's rebate have no country of origin restriction, so buyers in some provinces will still get incentive money, while buyers in others won't. That's a real cost difference depending entirely on which province you live in, and it's exactly the kind of detail that gets buried under flashy spec sheets. But here's why this still matters enormously for every single Canadian car shopper, even the ones who never buy a Chinese SUV themselves. The moment real competition arrives in a market, every existing player has to respond. When BYD's compact SUV lands 30 to 50% below a comparable Toyota or Honda, Toyota and Honda don't get to just shrug it off. They cut prices, they add features, they move faster on their own EV timelines than they otherwise would have. That's already happened in Europe. That's already happened across Southeast Asia and Australia. Canada is about to find out what that pressure feels like firsthand, starting with a single dealership opening in Toronto before the end of this year. So here's the question worth sitting with. If a Chinese-built full-size SUV with 1,381 horsepower and a floating emergency mode showed up in your local dealership tomorrow, priced tens of thousands below the German equivalent, would badge loyalty still win, or would the spec sheet finally do the talking? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this gave you a clearer picture of what's actually landing in Canada this year, hit subscribe so you catch the next update the moment BYD's Toronto doors actually open.